I'm Andrew Lazinski with the Critical Research Laboratory in Law and Society, and I'm here today sitting with York alumnus and President and CEO of ProCana Consulting, Mr. Kevin Mansouri. Welcome, Kevin. And today we have a special feature with the Corporate Governance Research Network, where we explore political and operational risks related to foreign direct investment. Now, Kevin, why don't you tell us a little bit about ProCana Consulting and what activities you're involved in?
Well, thank you, Andrew, and it's a pleasure to be at Osgoode Hall. ProCana Consulting, it's a Canadian consulting firm dedicated to assist international companies operating in South Africa and 11 other African countries under our portfolio. Basically, what we do, we assist Canadian international companies operate within various industry sectors throughout Africa.
So before you get involved in any specific African country, we have to obviously account for the business culture, especially when we're going to talk about political and operational risks. How important is understanding the business culture on the ground for a foreign company investing in a foreign jurisdiction?
Absolutely, and that this could be pretty crucial for a Canadian company. We are quite used to this, and we see it from time to time that our Canadian clients refer to the whole continent as one country. It is critical to remember that Africa consists of 55 independent nations, different regions, different business cultures. We always advise our clients not to generalize. It is quite crucial to understand the country-specific business model that we'd like to plan for prior to implementing anything. So our first advice to our clients is that understand the market, the local market that you would like to enter, and then start planning for risk mitigation.
So when we're talking about, of course, business culture, this is obviously going to have a connection to political risks that affect any given country. So why don't we talk a little bit more, or give us an idea about what we mean by political risks?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, political risk in general could be expropriation, nationalization, currency insolvency, power purchase contracts not honored. These are the main factors that could arise from a political risk to a Canadian company. It is essential for a Canadian company to realize when they operate in a foreign country, there are rules and laws that they need to be followed. Just because of the fact that the Canadian company investing directly in a foreign nation does not necessarily always guarantee the return on the operational or business investment. What it also means is that the compliance with the current political trend in a country that they're operating, what it would cost a Canadian company for non-compliance could be seizure of assets, delay in operations, or certain security risks. So when we look into our clients' risk mitigation pertaining to the political risk, we always understand the operational side in parallel with the political current of the country, and then be advised. It has to be noted that these sort of activities are not uncommon in Africa. However, it is up to a Canadian company to comply with the hosting country's laws and regulations. So that's the first thing we advise our clients prior to the planning and implementation of any business engagement.
Excellent. Thank you, Kevin. So if I'm a Canadian company and I'm looking to invest in a foreign jurisdiction in Africa, how do I identify political risks, and what do I have to look for on the ground in order to begin to adjust my corporate business strategy to work within those constructs and confines that exist in that country?
Well, certainly. The first thing that a Canadian company needs to remember is that identifying political risk has to be specific to the target market. Again, generalization has to be avoided at all times. Also, simply understanding the current political climate in your target market is not sufficient to give you a good spectrum of identifying possible political risks. Other aspects that need to be identified is that a forecasted approach to uh, political parties, opposition parties, the regional conflicts, the pressure, public pressure for change, and pressure from international community. That would give a Canadian company a better understanding of the political risk possible that may affect their operations in the target market. Now, that when that is done, that is not the end. It is not sufficient to consider understanding the current political climate, forecasting the future trend, and say your political risk identification has been completed. Quite the opposite. Again, Africa has been subject to swift political changes throughout decades, and sometimes swiftly, and a lot of international companies have been caught not predicting what sort of a political direction a host country may go to. So what we would advise our clients is to initiate institutional political risk monitoring at their organization, to continuously monitor the political trends in the target market or the markets in Africa they're operating in. That way, you will ensure that you are always prepared for any change that may happen within your target market.
So it sounds to me like political risk mitigation is better to approach it as an entire part of your business strategy and get it into everything that you're doing with the company right off the start, rather than having to adjust after a political risk has emerged. Could you tell me a little bit how your strategy for helping Canadian companies changes when you're first starting out and doing a political risk assessment and monitoring, versus when a company calls you in saying, Kevin, we got a problem on the ground, we haven't been considering the political risks, and now we have a situation. Just tell us a little bit about how your approach differs.
Well, absolutely. I mean, mitigating risk after the fact is more expensive, time consuming, and it could cost your time to market services. So that has to be avoided. What we recommend our clients, and that would be the best case scenario that we always look for, is at the planning stages. What we advise our clients is to identify, plan, implement, continuously monitor the political risk that might be surrounding your business operations in Africa. There are various ways to avoid issues that may arise from political changes in a country. By political change, we don't just mean change of a president or change of a ruling political party. Political change in Africa could affect entire international operations in a country from time to time. We had that issue, for example, during Arab uprising recently. A number of European, mainly French, call centers, for example, have been affected through their operations in North Africa. Now, this is swift, unexpected change. These call centers, European call centers, they did not have risk mitigated planning in place to deal with the swift changes that they faced. It is understandable. A lot of these political changes, they affected the business and operational market in an unexpected fashion. However, at ProCana Consulting, we always have contingencies and ways to avoid it. There are two ways that you could start mitigating the risk, the political risk that you have identified in advance. One would be government communication strategies, lobbying. For lobbying, it is quite sensitive. It is a delicate matter, and it needs to be implemented in your specific target market, always with assistance of a local consulting firm. It is not advisable to fast track or to get into arrangements with the ruling government for a business engagement that your company may or may not be equipped to mitigate should a risk arise. So lobbying, government lobbying, is one of the ways that you could start mitigating your issues before they arise. Also, there is a public-private partnership For short-term, country-specific, project-specific engagements, we always recommend public-private partnerships, in which a Canadian company has the capability to distribute the risk between private and public sector, which would certainly assist with mitigating any political risk that may arise unexpectedly.
So there are a lot of academic models, for example, that look at private-public partnerships as a major mitigator of political risks, so that if you get involved in a private-public partnership, all of a sudden you have significantly mitigated your political risks. So I'm interested in seeing, is from your experience, are private-public partnerships sort of like a one-size-fits-all solution, or is it necessary that they don't work in some instances where in others, or it's a situational thing based on which businesses you're involved in? Could you give us a little bit of a sort of explanation about where you might get into some problems with private-public partnership, or where the private-public partnership might get you out of some really tough situations?
Well, absolutely. Well, I mean, it's public-private partnership, triple P, we call it. For triple P, I mean, I'm sure it sounds wonderful at the boardroom level, sitting in Canada, thinking that, okay, lucrative project in a specific country, it would be a fantastic opportunity to distribute the risk between private and public sector. However, there is no cookie cutter solution. What we recommend for a Canadian company prior to considering a triple P operation in Africa, anywhere in Africa, is to consider three factors. First, we recommend the Canadian company to consider a triple P operations in a progressive African nation with the legislative power and capability to support a foreign direct investment and operations. You want to make sure that in terms of issues, legal issues, you are protected, or at least have capability to mitigate some of the risks that may arise from a triple P working 2 continents away. Second, you always should consider an African country with sufficient economic growth and the capacity to absorb large amount of foreign direct investment. Again, you will need to make sure that your investment is spent in a specific industry sector that you're planning to invest the money in, and is not distributed throughout other operational aspects that you may or may not be able to see in advance. The third criteria is an African country that openly, publicly has a capacity to promote, plan, and implement triple P operations working with international companies.
Thank you, Kevin. So Canada just recently passed a new act against bribing foreign officials, which I'm sure is something that has to be accounted for when operating, in any foreign jurisdiction. Could you just give us a little example about how you approach those types of issues, or what you have to look out for when you're trying to steer a Canadian company into, a foreign jurisdiction, making sure that you're abiding by the laws of that country as well as Canada now with this new act?
Absolutely, and this is a great question. As a Canadian company consulting Canadian and international companies, no parties shall engage in any illegal activities outside of Canada. So as Canadian registered corporations, us, our clients, our affiliates, and our partners, we are barred from entering into any illegal activities. Having said that, at ProCanada Consulting, we firmly believe in the fact that given the proper planning and approach to doing business in Africa, there may not be a need for any bribery to begin with. It is not a nice word to hear about. You don't want to talk about it at the boardroom level. You don't certainly want to talk about it at the public domain or at the local legal establishment. So it has to be avoided at all times. But there are ways to avoid getting into a situation that you may actually have to bribe a government official in Africa. We can always provide planning approaches to manage that. For example, Canadian companies they can avoid getting into a situation that they need to pay anybody off. They can do a bit of a planning. For example, corporate responsibility projects, they go a long, long way in any region in Africa, all the way from Egypt to South Africa. It could be quite effective in winning projects, winning the hearts and minds of the local community you operate in, and they could increase your operational performance as well. So the money is well spent. You are part of the community you're operating, and you're actually effectively mitigating any risk that may arise. So that's one approach. The other approach that is quite important, as Canadians we always need to consider, is direct open communication with the country officials at the level that you're operating at. Again, as we have mentioned, it's essential to have an open communication not only with the foreign, not with the federal government, also with the local government. It's sometimes you can have unexpected results with just having an open communication, not fast tracking, get into open bidding process, provide your expertise, your knowledge, know-how as a Canadian to the local market, and you can avoid a lot of issues and a lot of problems, for sure.
Well, thank you, Kevin. We really appreciate you coming by the Critical Research Lab studios and sharing your expertise with us. Again, this is Kevin Mansouri, the President and CEO of ProCana Consulting, and this is a special look at political and operational risks for the Corporate Governance Research Network. Thanks again, Kevin.
Thank you, and my pleasure.